Alors, bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Nous sommes à notre nouvelle série d'édition des explorations du mentorat inclusif, proposée par l'accélérateur mentoral de Mentorat Québec. Permettez-moi de nous présenter de plus belle. Nous sommes donc vos animateurs, Joël Naouej-Caritage, responsable du comité de l'accélérateur mentoral de Mentorat Québec, et ma collègue Jennifer Petrella, experte en mentorat. Alors, l'exploration d'aujourd'hui est l'une des deux explorations sur le mentorat autour du monde. Comment l'Europe diffère du Québec? Aujourd'hui, nous discuterons avec des responsables de programmes de mentorat venus de l'Espagne et du Royaume-Uni. Dans l'autre exploration du même sujet, nous discuterons avec des responsables de la France ainsi que de la Suisse. Pour pouvoir échanger avec nos interlocuteurs et interlocutrices aujourd'hui, nous échangerons donc en anglais. Alors, vous aurez la traduction de nos propos en sous-titrage. À noter que c'est le traducteur Zoom qui fera son travail et le mot mentorat est souvent traduit par tutorat. Alors, ne soyez pas surpris ou dupés. On parle bel et bien de mentorat ici. So, without further ado, let's switch it up and switch to English. So, here is our topic for today. When it comes to theory, Quebec's definition of mentoring is not far removed from the definitions that prevail in Europe. In general, we refer to it as being a relationship where a person with more experience is giving in a given field, the mentor, accompanies a person with less experience in that field, being the mentee, to share knowledge, to build skills, and to develop the mentee's potential. There may, however, be nuances, especially when it comes down to inclusive mentoring, which we will discuss a little later on. When we move far beyond the definitions and into practice, however, differences between Europe and Quebec emerge. For example, mentoring is more predominant in some areas of the economy and in some groups of society in Europe than in Quebec, and vice versa. Also, the profile of the typical mentor-mentee may differ. Similarly, expectations for the outcomes of the mentoring relationship may also vary. So to delve deeper, we're talking to mentoring experts and practitioners from 4 European countries, being Spain, France, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland. And today's exploration will highlight Spain and the UK. We're very much looking forward to welcoming our speakers, but just before we do so, our audience may want to learn a few basics about Mentorat Québec and its accélérateur mentoral, or as we translated, the mentoring accelerator. And for that, Jennifer, I'll give you the microphone.
Thanks so much, Joël. So Mentorat Québec is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2002 to promote good mentoring practices in Quebec and the Francophone world. And about 5 years ago, in 2019, we began a new program called the Mentorship Accelerator, Accélérateur Mentoral, which focuses on inclusive mentoring. Started with women in male-dominated industries, but also gender-diverse people, various people who sometimes find themselves in a situation of marginalization. How does the Mentorship Accelerator accomplish its mandate? Well, we do have, of course, the series of explorations, webinars, like Joël mentioned. We also twice a year lead a cohort of companies through all the steps required to design, implement, and evaluate an inclusive mentorship program. We have an accreditation program that certifies inclusive mentoring programs. We do a whole bunch of podcasts and webinars and funny videos on how to be a good mentor in inclusive settings. We do trainings, we do conferences within companies, and in 2025, we're starting a new service. It's called Cette Montréal, which means chats about mentoring. It will be monthly kind of meetups of mentorship program administrators to discuss issues that might come up and solutions that they might have developed in their inclusive mentorship programs. We are supported by the Secrétariat de la Condition Féminine, so Quebec's Status of Women Department, and have been for the past 5 years.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So without further ado, let us introduce the panelists present today with us. So we first off, chivalry may apply definitely. So we will start by Isabel Gutierrez Pedemonte. She is the Quality and Research Manager at Coordinadora de Mentoría Social, CMS, Spain's umbrella organization for social mentoring programs. Isabel's role is to support projects as they assess their quality and develop improvement plans. She also works with the CMS partner organization to identify evaluation needs and interests from the field to establish collaborative networks between research and practice. A social anthropologist, with a master's degree in migration and social intervention. Isabelle has a background in community action and intercultural awareness. She is convinced of mentorship's transformative capacity and the importance of establishing spaces for dialogue as a means of fostering inclusion.
As well as Isabelle, we have with us Victor González Núñez, who holds an undergraduate degree in political science and international relations, as well as a master's degree in contemporary migration with a specialization in education. Victor has collaborated with bottom-up participatory projects in developing countries, as well as in local penitentiary centers. He focuses on educational policies for the inclusion of disadvantaged groups, especially migrants. For the past 3 years, Victor has coordinated the mentoring component of a project at Fundación Nous, that accompanies 250 economically vulnerable post-secondary students in Barcelona. He connects the students to volunteers from diverse sociocultural backgrounds and helps the students develop soft skills. The program has been awarded Spain's highest mentoring accreditation, Celo Plus.
Next, we have Christopher McLaverty, is the director from mentoring practices at the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, EMCC UK. He holds a master's degree in coaching, consulting, and change from INSEAD, that was from the year 2010, and a doctorate in education from the University of Pennsylvania, being from 2017. Christopher is a qualified executive coach in management consultant and educator who has designed and led mentoring programs for energy companies, banks, and professional service firms. His research into how senior executives approach ethical dilemmas has been published in the Harvard Business Review.
Mm. And finally, we have with us Laura, who is a colleague of mine because we presented together at the European Mentoring Summit about a month ago. So Laura is the project manager of a youth mentoring program also at nous in Barcelona. Sorry, there's a small lag in my audio here. She holds a degree in psychology from the University of Santiago de Compostela, a master's degree in psychosocial intervention, and a certification in systemic interventions. Laura dedicates her career to social intervention for young people and families in vulnerable contexts. As the coordinator of nous mentoring program, she ensures that youth from vulnerable backgrounds receive the support they need to continue their education beyond the mandatory school system. The program emphasizes mentoring as a tool to foster community bonds and drive social transformation.
Thank you all for being with us. Again, good afternoon in your time zone. Thank you for taking the time to discuss about how it may differ, but also resemble itself in terms of practices of the art of mentoring. So to start off, the first question would be is addressed. Let's start by with Christopher, but also you will all be more than welcome to share your point of view. So Christopher, as in being the representative of the UK, in what industry and environment is mentoring more prevalent in the United Kingdom?
I'd say it's a fairly prevalent, almost ubiquitous form of personal development in the UK. Firstly, it can cluster in almost certain traditional professions. So, for example, if you want to become a secondary school teacher in the UK, a form of mandatory mentoring is part of passing your probation. Like you get a mentor who observes your classroom practice and how you interact and deal with the curriculum and with children. Likewise, there are also similar mentoring programs in higher education and mentoring in training doctors and nurses. So that's kind of one kind of cluster. The second cluster, I think, would be in almost any sector of the economy, like public or private sector, that is any sort of track record or investment in kind of talent management or investment in kind of training and development. I'd almost be tempted to say, like in my experience, maybe There's less evidence of mentoring in retail, maybe less evidence of mentoring in, say, insurance, but it's certainly prevalent in, the civil service, local government, the National Health Service, banking, consulting, manufacturing, engineering, for example. And then I think you will find mentoring to be prevalent in charities in the community. And I can give some examples later on, but there are many, say, charities, and I'm thinking of a resonance or a similarity when you're introducing my Spanish colleagues. There's an example of a charity called Football Beyond Borders that tries to sort of train boys and girls in economically marginalized kind of areas in football, and the idea being that the children or the youth or the adolescents come to kind of coaching in football, but they also have an ability to be mentored by trained coaches who can mentor them in these areas. So that's just kind of like an overview. It's fairly prevalent. I think if I just did a random check and maybe asked my mother or a person on the street, what is a mentor, they'd probably be able to think of what a mentor and a mentee is or what they should do. And I'm even thinking, we have an election going on at the minute in the UK, and it's fairly prevalent in the press, this politician, their mentor was so-and-so in the 1990s, or this person, is coming from the left of British politics and was mentored by X, Y, or Z. So fairly prevalent.
And as it being very prevalent, is it mostly formal mentoring, or is there a mix in between formal and informal?
It's both, and I would tend to say a lot of individuals, like if you say, how did you get to where you are today, or how did your career progress? And you ask them, did you have a mentor? Many people will have some sort of memory or link to informal mentors. When you go into these organizations that are thinking very in a structured way of professional development or talent kind of management, you will find formal mentoring programs, where the mentors are being trained, there are outputs that are kind of specified, and maybe even the quality of the programs are kind of measured to see if they're aligned against objectives. So like a mix of both.
What about in Spain? Who wants to go next? What would be the industries and the environment where the art of the practice of mentoring is more prevalent? Laura.
Hi. Well, it's kind of different what I was going to say. I think mentoring is evolving towards more structured programs, as far as I know. But our focus is mainly social work and educational fields, not as much as industry or economic fields. So we are not that close to this kind of environment where mentoring programs are developed. I will say that inclusive mentoring programs, as you're talking about, this focus on universities, professional associations, but I usually developed by social entities like ours, which are all under the umbrella organization of Coordinadora de Mentoría Social. So I think Isabel can maybe add something more about this.
Thank you, Laura. I would be happy to add a little bit to that. Actually, I would like to connect with what was Chris talking about regarding some informal mentoring, some research that have been doing out of Spain and also inside of Spain. Spain proved that a lot of people from vulnerable communities, people at risk, cannot access informal mentoring. So what we are promoting is formal mentoring, social mentoring to try to fill this gap, to try to offer the opportunity to have mentors, to have some references, positive references in the communities that people that cannot access informal mentoring naturally. So organizations, social organizations, NGOs and programs try to answer this need and offering positive reference by social mentoring a little bit. But as Laura was saying, we are not focusing in economic fields, but we are focusing on communities of people at risk. So we are working with youth that are having underprivileged youth mostly, but also with refugees, asylum seekers, migrants that have no family at the new country that they live on. Also women who have suffered violence at home. Some mentoring programs that focus on gender and LGBTQ+ needs. And also we have some mentoring projects in our umbrella organizations that work with people that are facing re-entry after conviction periods. So it has a broad diversity of mentoring projects that are all focusing on offering social inclusion for people that might be at risk and they're maybe excluded in some communities or areas.
That's so interesting. The focus is very different. Christopher, we spoke to France and Switzerland yesterday. Switzerland, like they don't even, the word mentor is a new word in their vocabulary. Most people don't understand what, they look at you blankly. It certainly seems that the UK, the fields you mentioned are vast. You mentioned that that you use the word ubiquitous, which is just off the scale for these other countries. You also mentioned that it's mandatory for secondary school teachers. I think you also for doctors, nurses, and higher education. You mentioned this is light years ahead. I'm wondering, Isabel, Laura, Victor, I know that your specialization is, vulnerable groups, but if we just step back a little bit for Spain as a whole, if mentoring is not present in the work world or in the training world, like Christopher pointed out, are there other forms of accompaniment that take over?
As far as I know, and a little bit as Chris said, like more about personal experience, about talking with friends and people I know, the only thing I knew that can be more or less related of what we think maybe mentoring, it's on companies like senior staff are doing this kind of like very informal training or support to newcomers on the company. So they are like more like kind of a guidance and someone that has experience on this same, let's say, same job. But that's, at least for me, that's the only thing more or less related that can be found on companies or industries. It's
really fascinating. I mean, in Quebec, our corporate use of mentoring is, I would say, the most advanced. If we looked at corporate, if we looked at education, if we looked at social, for sure, would you agree with me, Joël? Corporate is the most advanced. You find it in banks and insurance companies and startups. You find it a lot in the entrepreneurial sector.
Definitely. Quebec is a very entrepreneurial, has a very entrepreneurial spirit. So being mentor and or in some other field, being coached is very present. A little bit more informal in when it comes to community services, when it comes to inclusion of newcomers. It will be more informal programs, but you also have some out in the outskirts of the big city. Smaller regions where they have a closer, tight-knit reach with the people that arrive. They happen to start building more structured inclusion program, but outside of only the hat of professional sphere of things. It's more so helping the people acclimate themselves to the new environment, the new ways, the language and stuff like that, because we are Francophone, but the rest of the country is pretty much Anglophone. So so more present, structured in company and businesses, but more so informal in community services and in social work and that type of things.
Christopher, I'd be curious to know what kind of, since it's so ubiquitous and so, well kind of anchored or grounded, are there any kinds of controls or, like structures, frameworks for these different forms of mentoring in different environments?
There are some, and they're very fragmented. I am fairly sure with my interaction with, say, mentoring in, say, the secondary school with probationary teachers, the mentor would have gone through some quick training program And there are probably metrics, that would check that the probationary teacher has had so many classroom observations or so many one-to-one interactions with the sort of experienced teacher that has taken them under their wing in mentoring, for example. Many commercial private sector organizations will seek to have training programs for their mentors. There's a growing requirement for getting those programs externally accredited. Mm-hmm. And in the type of community mentoring or charity mentoring programs that are seeking to sort of overcome things like social exclusion, I think there's been quite a kind of a long and hard learning process, about vetting individuals and getting sort of the right individuals with the right qualifications to mentor, but it is still very fragmented. I work alongside in the EMCC, coaching, and there's been a lot of very rapid development, I'd say, in the last 5 or 6 years about the accreditation of coaching, getting coaches to be professionally qualified, getting coaches to have sort of proper supervision for their work. And this would still be fairly uncommon in the field of mentoring in comparison. And it's one of those real differences, that coaching is often a commercial consulting type arrangement where you charge a fee for it. Mentoring is often within the organization and it's kind of free, in inverted commas, or it's a voluntary exercise, which I think makes the regulation of it be a little more difficult or challenging.
I understand. When you speak of accrediting programs, who would do that work? What bodies?
Oh, like EMCC itself seeks to accredit mentors. There was an attempt by the UK government to set up something called the Association of Business Mentors, and this was, experienced entrepreneurs who would take a startup under their wing and kind of mentor. As far as I'm aware, that scheme has fizzled out. Like our government is more or less fizzling out at the minute, and it never really properly got off the ground. There are also a fair number of sort of universities that offer degrees in coaching and mentoring, where accreditation is part, of the one-year program you might do. Although again, from experience, they tend to be a lot more skewed towards coaching, and their material on mentoring is often less evident.
Isn't that interesting? So just for the record, everybody, the government of Quebec has been supporting a mentorship program for entrepreneurs for the past 25 years, paying big bucks to get entrepreneurs all around, hundreds of them all around the province, personal mentors. Isn't this interesting? But there's no certification. So the mentors go through a very rigorous training program, and they have to succeed that in order to be, but they're not certified. They're just kind of trained, and to your point, Chris, they're volunteers. So nobody's going to pay to be certified, if you're doing your work for free. Isabelle, your group, Coordinateur et Mentoria Social, is in charge of certifying social mentoring programs. Can you give us a little bit a sense of the numbers? Like, how many programs are there out there, if that's a possible question to answer? How many are interested in certification? How many go through with certification?
This is a very good question. I would like to point out that in Spain, we don't have a long background or long history in mentoring. I think the oldest known mentoring project that we know about is 25 years old. So we've seen a very quick growth in mentoring in Spain, and even more quickly expanding after COVID, when the need to create social connected has been necessary all over, I think. So in this growing context, a lot of mentoring projects that are mostly focused in local or regional areas in Spain got together to create Coordinadora de Mentoría Social, so they could get this platform to exchange knowledge, to create knowledge, build knowledge on mentoring, so we can create tools, resources, evidence, and also to create a quality framework that we generated, which is the sello MC, and which we use to certify the quality in the methodology of mentoring projects all over Spain. The sello has been active in the past 3 years, and we have certified already 17 projects. We are in the process of certifying 5 new projects right now, and I hope in the autumn they will have the certification. And also we are focusing on providing the tools and the resources in all the different mentoring projects so they can improve their quality and their methodology, and they can at the end reach this certification that we are providing. Also because in this context of growing mentoring capacity, it's important to have this certification to ensure that programs are doing the best in their capacities, to provide training to the mentors and the participants, to take care of the participants, to have more impact and results, better results at the end. And also because for fundraisers, it can be easier to see which programs are maybe have already the certification, so maybe they're doing a better job and they can decide how to give the fundings for mentoring programs.
Right. You know, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, Isabel, and you explained to me the sello program. So sello in English, it's seal, right? It's like a label, a seal of approval kind of thing. I was very interested to learn that it's not just, you know, a one and done kind of thing, like, oh, I meet 75% of the requirements, therefore I get the seal and I'm done. It's more like, these are the 25 requirements perhaps that I don't meet. So how can I meet them? And you work with the group to actually get them to where they want to be in the end. It's a very, I don't know if that's how it works a little bit with in the UK, Christopher, when people come to be certified or accredited.
I think it's very much a sort of an individual journey, and I'm not even sure, you know, let's say in the marketplace, if you were seeking sort of gainful employment or even to volunteer for an organization, you know, I'm not sure how much currency mentoring accreditation has right now at this point in time. As I say, I sense the whole field of coaching has developed a much more kind of rigorous set of entry requirements. And I know of a lot of individuals being turned back and say, sorry, you can't work here because, you know, you don't have the right accreditation to coach. But mentoring seems to be much looser. And I think there's a loss and a risk with that situation, but there isn't any type of kind of UK structure at a country level to overcome it. You know, you could go into a cluster of hospitals and find, you know, for nursing, we don't let, you know, nurses mentor unless they've done this training program, but it's fragmented. You could change job as a nurse and go to another cluster of hospitals, and if you volunteer and said, well, okay, start tomorrow, away you go.
Yeah, well, what's interesting with it, that what coordinator was saying by Isabel, was that it becomes a financial incentive. So Isabel mentioned that the sello, the seal, means that a particular mentorship program might attract funding, charitable funding, because they have that seal saying that they're a good mentorship program. Whereas, you know, maybe if that's not an issue for the charities in the UK, then why bother? I don't know.
I'm not aware of it. It doesn't mean there aren't little green shoots appearing, and of course there's continual dialogue and best practice, you know, moving, you know, across borders. But it's not something that, say, like a major piece of work or a major client of EMCC has ever really brought to my attention from any sector.
Yeah, so that's not where we're evolving in the UK. I can tell you that we've done a little bit of research on it in Quebec. Quebec actors are definitely evolving towards inclusive mentorship. They don't just want mentorship anymore. They want inclusive mentorship. They want to put that kind of program into place. But the actual accreditation, I don't know how much of an appetite there is here. They like to have the seal, but whether they're interested in going to spend time with somebody like Isabel, like investing in the whole process that Isabel has explained to me is very rigorous. I'm not sure. If Isabel and Victor, Laura, when you're looking at the evolution of the field, would you say that accreditation is that's on everybody's mind, or that's still marginal?
I'm not sure how known the sello is from now, but as a program that we are accredited by this sello plus, what it works for us is not only on the foundation, it's also because when people come to our program, they have the assurance that they are volunteering in like a professional and with some items that are clarified of the quality of our program, that they will make them more comfortable about taking the time and the decision of being a volunteer in our mentoring program. I think it's also for the mentors good to ensure that they are in a quality process and well accompanied by our program staff.
Right. Makes sense.
And if I can just bounce and backtrack a little bit, just when Isabel, you mentioned that it's been 25 years of age of the ongoing awareness of mentoring in Spain. What does it evoke? If we bounce back to the idea where Christopher says that in England it's been in the UK it's been very much implemented. When people talk about mentor, mentee, there's something that comes to mind, somebody that was either informal or formal. But what is the general perception when people outside of just in the everyday life, when you talk mentor, mentee, what does it evoke to people? Is it something that resonates, or is it something fairly new that is not even part of the language just yet? What is the evolution of just the sense of what mentoring is? Could be Victor.
Yeah, I will say that still, as we have said, that mentoring, this kind of mentoring that we are talking about, the focus on disadvantaged groups, it's still very young. This kind of mentoring, when you talk with people that it's not specialized on the field, they don't really have this idea. So still, it's a lot of like a lot of length to run. But still, also, I think that the word or the concept of mentoring has been, I don't know, like jeopardized on the last years, as it has been used in many different ways or fields, like with some friends, and now this is more like anecdotic. But when I say that I was starting working on a mentoring project, that was 5 years ago, they knew mentoring about flirting mentoring. That may sound a bit I don't know if funny or creepy, but that's what some people just hear about mentoring, because there is some people in internet, in YouTube, in Instagram, in TikTok, talking using this concept of mentoring for these many different things. So I think this is a job, let's say, or a challenge that we have in our projects to focus on what is mentoring for us and other things that maybe, of course, different kinds of accompaniment and making this difference.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add something to this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think mentoring also in like the public spaces is associated with career development. Like in the common language, a mentor is who guides you through your career development or a success in life, not as much as social transformation or community cohesion. And I was hearing what you were saying, Chris, about coaching and mentoring. And I think this enterprise and career development lens leads sometimes to some confusion between what a mentor and a coach is. And I don't know, in the UK, I'm curious about how you address this difference, because for us, we believe there's a difference between both concepts, and we separate them. Because for us, like the coaching is to support a personal professional growth, as mentoring does, but a mentor offers a long-term guidance based on the experience and also based on the bond in the relationship, and fostering like a more holistic, personal, and bidirectional relationships, different from coaching. And I think this kind of difference is not as much developed in the public spaces. And we think about mentoring in like, yes, you're going to have a lot of girls if this mentor come to you and tell you what to do. And also with the career development and success in this economical field and not in the community-based field.
I guess the question was addressed to Christopher.
Yeah, it can be.
I think the best way I can kind of get my head around this is there are lots of really, really great coaches who never have to mentor. And I can think in my own coaching practice, I'm always aware my own my own skills and development are often not that relevant. I've coached people who want to leave the military and find their first job outside the military. I have coached engineers, and believe you me, I am an anthropologist. I am so far from being able to understand like a simple engineering diagram, but coaching works because you're asking a set of broad prompting questions, and in a way, you're getting the coachee to do the work. Now, I think in mentoring, most mentors occasionally have to coach. What do you think you should do? Or what do you believe the options are? And if I was never to meet you again, what would you do next? These are kind of coaching questions that could be very, very relevant in a mentoring relationship. But I think you're right. Mentoring implies, I think, the knowledge of the field or the resources that someone wants, like the mentee wants to gain access to. And it sort of suggests some type of intervention or some type of direction, ultimately, if the mentee needs that or requires it. So the fields, as far as I see it, like there's a linkage, but it tends to be there are many, many coaches that never have to touch mentoring, never have to think about it. Most mentors at certain points, I think, benefit from having the skills of the coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes good sense.
All right, so let's dive into the inclusive side of things. So we spoke a lot about helping the social changes, and with everything that's going on in the world, as we know, liberation of communities, the uplifting of women. How does inclusive mentoring work in your country? What are the issues, the ongoing challenges, the audiences that are in need or requiring or decide to put forward themselves different ways to mentor, to break away from the traditional mentoring? What is the inclusive side? How does it take place in Spain or in UK? Whoever wants to dive in first. All right, so I guess I will pick somebody.
Isabel, you say?
Or Jennifer, Jennifer, you can start off to present the spectrum in Quebec and just lead the way for our guests to chime in.
Absolutely. So inclusive mentoring. So I would say that women have been kind of a focus for a while. I would say maybe probably in the 80s, the first women's focused mentoring programs came along for the workplace. Quebec is a leader in some cases for status of women. The disparity in wages, average wages, is less in Quebec than in the rest of Canada. It's still about 8%, but it's still, at least it's not 13%. And we have things like subsidized daycare, which given the distribution of care responsibilities in Western societies, impacts women a lot. And so the women in workplace programs, mentoring programs, have been around for a while. They're pretty solidly anchored. They are present, I would say, in most sectors and industries. We also, like you mentioned earlier, Joël, we do have some mentoring for immigrants, new arrivals, but as you say, it's informal, it's community-based, it's not structured. LGBTQ plus mentoring, I would say, is emerging. We have a number of organizations that are slowly kind of getting on board with that in Canada, particularly. And otherwise, we're very conscious of diversity inclusion in Canada. I would say that visible minorities are definitely a group that people are aware of. And then we're slowly starting to see kind of like programs or targets in terms of intergenerational, so like older people, and also older people, and perhaps also racialized people.
Isabel?
Yes. For what we understand as inclusive mentoring in Spain, we always talk about formal mentoring, which is very interesting, that it's different from other experiences. And we are talking about the person that offers voluntary to act as a mentor, to accompany, to support a mentee in an underprivileged group, as I was saying before. And at least this mentoring relationship should last for 6 months or longer. And during this time that the relationship is active, the mentors and mentees have the support from a technical staff from the mentoring project, so they provide resources and support so they can act accordingly and reach some objective of personal development, maybe some instrumental objective like language learning in case of newcomers, or maybe educational improvement in case of youth in school or in higher education. So we have a big diversity of situations. I would like to point out that in some data about the mentoring programs that are part of our organization, 60%, 65% of the mentoring programs are focusing in youth. So that's different from Quebec, as you were saying, Jennifer. And from these, 40% are focused in migrants, refugees, and newcomers to Spain. So this is the main communities that we are working right now with mentoring, but as we were saying, it's growing, it's developing quickly, and we are finding every day new programs and new communities that are actively using mentoring to improve their quality and their inclusion of different groups. It's also interesting that when we understand social mentoring, we're talking in bi-directional mentoring. Like, one of the main focus of mentoring is that we are transforming, we are offering resources and support to the mentee, but the mentor, as in the experience in this mentoring relationship, also grows in their personal development in terms of communication, empathy, maybe some interpersonal relationship. It also grows. So when we are talking about this, we are talking social mentoring, we are transforming the society, not only the person that is acting as a mentee. So it's like a holistic intervention, as we understand. But maybe Victor and Laura can provide something from their experience as a mentoring program working in the field.
Yeah, I've talked too much, Victor. I don't know if you can also.
Victor, you're a specialist in migration, and I find that interesting in this context, just because, Canada does not have all that many undocumented migrants. I mean, we're kind of far from everywhere else, and the ones who come through the United States, we have a special law that means if they don't get asylum in the United States, they can't come through and ask for it here. It's quite restrictive. I mean, we do have some, but I can imagine that we're nowhere near the volume that you might get in Spain. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear, your experiences as, as an on the ground program manager, as Isabel mentioned, but also with respect to migrants.
Yeah, on the field of migrants, I will talk like connecting migrants and mentoring. It does exist, for example, some projects like the PCR. I'm thinking that Joe Isabel will know more. Like, it's just a governmental, like a Catalan government project, just focus on refugees, like asylum seekers. So that's very important because it's a public policy.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
On that, yeah, and mentoring, it's one of the main fields of intervention of this project. In our specific case, in the project that we work on, actually 65%, usually more or less, from 60 to 70% of our youth they have like foreign roots. It may be like first or second generation, even if I don't really like this term, but so we can clarify this. But yeah, still it's more focused on the socioeconomical background. In our case, it's like the main root, like this class branch on the intersectional field that you discussed in Paris together with Laura and Jennifer. And yeah, then we have all these other debates that we've been thinking about how to, like Isabel was talking about, this kind of bidirectional knowledge, and how mentors are also learning from this experience. And also we have some challenges regarding civic participation in volunteer projects, because Isabel already said this minimum length. So we are talking about a commitment of a lot of time, and people is not having a lot of free time nowadays, unfortunately. So the matching of all these concepts, it's not getting an easy thing. But well, I will say we are working on it.
You're working hard.
Well, it's
you spoke about migrants and refugees, and knowing that in a general aspect, when we talk about the press and the media, it's a lot of time it's spoken with a connotation that is negative. So how does mentoring refugees and migrants helping bettering the image, or this notion that is that these people are human beings, they're coming here to actively be a part of society? How do you guys operate in making sure that this inclusion is being taken care of, and changing the perception of the general public towards newcomers and immigrants and refugees?
Yeah, I will say just 2 or 3 things on this regard. Like, the first one, of course it's very important that we talk about the context theory of output, but I always like the concept of bubbles, like in our cities, and well, more or less in all cities in the Western countries, people live in their own bubble. So at the end, you get to know people that are very likely as you are, like the same age, the same class, the same origin. So it's not really easy that you are like we or anyone is mixing with someone very different than you. So just the fact that you are putting together people that it's like different age, different origin, different social class, and in this what you, Joel, specifically asked, like this origin. So getting to know, in our case, people that is born here, let's say, or that has been for many years here, with newcomers, just getting this space that they get to know, they recognize each other, and they get to know their cultural traditions, like, well, their life. That is just that. It's a very crucial point. Then another thing that we think it's very important, and actually that's why we are here, that like the people working on these projects, it's not just putting them together and whatever it happens there will be okay, but just to control. So that's why we are doing some training before to the mentors, like doing some sensibilization for these mentors specifically, but to the whole society in general, that we think is actually very, very important, and to control what is going on this relationship, like while this mentee and mentor are together. And well, the last question you asked about the mass media and their perception on this. I will say I'm very critical on that. I studied communication studies also, and just to be diplomatic, I think the mass media are controlled by some specific powers, let's say. So it's very difficult. We try in our projects, also the Coordinadora de Mentoría Social, to do this sensibilization at the end to the society, and sometimes through the media as one of the speakers, I would say, like, well, yeah.
Amplifiers.
Yeah, that amplifies, correct. That can reach more people. That at the end, like their interests are, I will say, are very difficult to control. At least here in
No, it's the same thing. It's the same. I mean,
yeah.
we've got to
Yeah, we live the same thing in Quebec.
Yes. Chris, let's I'd be interested to hear, where is inclusive mentoring most active and where is it evolving? What new groups or concerns are emerging?
Right. So I think, given the fragmented and complex nature of the UK and our history of mentoring, you can almost find out there whatever it is you're looking for, whatever it is you want. You could find examples of this. One really interesting one that I came across just a couple of weeks ago, and we're doing a podcast on it, is actually a sort of voluntary group, like a charity, that is looking at, say, the exclusion of single parents from employment. And it's a mentoring program for single parents. The idea being that you have, almost like a traditional family or an extended family. You have much more support for things like childcare or flexibility, and you can focus more on your career. And if you don't have that, you might find it time to excluded from employment. And they actually, find that about 80% of their mentees are single parents who are women, and about 20% are single parents that are men. And both genders experience a sort of feel of exclusion because of their family pattern. This is kind of one example. Broadly speaking, I think there's a debate with all mentoring programs, and that debate, and I think in Spain we were talking about bubbles. When I'm a mentee, do I have to find a mentor from the same bubble to make it work? So if I'm a person of color, do I need to find a really successful person of color to be my mentor? Or could I don't know, if I'm a black man, would a white woman work? Or what are the kind of the ground rules? And there's a huge amount of debate about this. And both seem to have real support and real proponents. There's one argument that goes, well, if you want to get into the mainstream, if you really want to succeed in a kind of a diverse multicultural society, you really need a sort of mentor maybe that's quite different to you and could take you out of the bubble. And then the other argument, which again can be very, very persuasive, is, I can only build my self-confidence and belief by having a mentor who has sort of gone before me and maybe had some type of similar journey that I have or that I face. And this is, it goes round and round and round, and it's a very live debate. And I can kind of think back, to my own experience of being like a mentee. We have this kind of our own unique little stuff in the UK, like the Irish are a distinct ethnic minority with protected characteristics. They're covered by the Race Relations Act. And I remember arriving as a middle manager in a very large company and finding someone from the same place in Ireland that I came from who said, well, why don't we have lunch? And why don't I explain to you how this place works? And maybe if you find people are a bit dismissive or not really willing to meet you, I could help, blah, 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 blah. And I think this idea of almost like special interest mentoring or mentoring through protected characteristics is quite a powerful one and is gaining a kind of a lot of traction.
That's interesting. We're working right now with the with the Canadian LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce, and it's just a ground rule, that in their mentorship program, the mentors have to be members of the community, of the LGBTQ+ community, not in any kind of, not with any kind of judgment or any kind of intention of exclusion or anything. It's just that coming out, being out at business, in the business environment, has just a whole bunch of particular costs and benefits and nuances to it that that these mentees really don't want to have to explain to somebody else, and what for, totally. Yeah, I understand that. Well, this is very interesting. We're coming to an end to our time together, although we could have continued much longer. So let me close by thanking very warmly these wonderful panelists that we had with us today. Isabel Gutierrez Pedemonte, who is Quality and Research Manager at Coordinadora de Montería Social. Victor González Núñez, Coordinator of New Sims Mentoring Program for Youth in Barcelona. Christopher McLaverty, who's Director for Mentoring Practice at the European Mentoring and Coaching Council UK, and Laura Prego Cuesta, who's Project Manager of a Youth Mentoring Program also at New Sims. Thank you, as always, to our supporter, the Secrétariat de la Condition Féminine du Québec.
Merci beaucoup encore une fois d'avoir été des nôtres, et on vous rappelle que cette exploration fera l'objet d'un article dans l'édition 2025 de la Sentinelle Mentorat, soit le recueil d'articles sur le mentorat écrits par des praticiens et experts du Québec et de l'étranger que publie Mentorat Québec une fois par année au mois de janvier, soit pour la célébration du mois du mentorat. On vous invite donc à consulter notre site web pour vous en procurer une copie, et surtout aussi consulter notre site web pour avoir l'outil de réflexion qui porte sur ces explorations, et puis surtout aussi de pouvoir avoir accès à notre espace membre en devenant membre pour justement avoir accès à notre panoplie de contenus, balado, exploration webinaire en rediffusion, et puis tout ce beau contenu inspirant sur la pratique mentorale inclusive. Alors, c'était encore une fois Jennifer Petrella, experte en mentorat, ainsi que moi-même, Joël Nawesh-Caritage, responsable du comité de l'accélérateur mentoral. Et on vous invite aussi à écouter la seconde portion de cette exploration qui compare les pratiques entre la France et la Suisse. Merci d'avoir été des nôtres pour cette nouvelle exploration sur le mentorat inclusif, et à très bientôt. Thank you again for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully it's only a first of many collaborations in the near future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Have a great
Pleasure.
afternoon.
Bye.
Ciao, con
Bye.
cuidado.
Adiós.
Adiós.